Hello, everyone. We're back with our friend Marybeth, QHHT, and me at gmail.com. Marybeth does so many things. It's like, where do we start? And we're going to talk about QHHT and BQH. I'm sorry, we're having video issues tonight, so we can't see Marybeth's beautiful face. But Marybeth, how are you this evening?
I'm great. Thanks, Liz.
Well, thank you for being here. And go ahead and give us a whole rundown on the history of QHHT, if you don't mind, please. The breakaway, the BQH, what all this is, if you don't mind.
Okay, so QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, and that was originated by the late Dolores Cannon. Dolores Cannon passed away in October of 2014. And prior to that, things in the QHHT practitioners was a little different than it is now. So a lot of things changed, as they do when the originator passes away. QHHT, Dolores started out doing hypnosis with her husband. Her husband did hypnosis on a naval base, just regular hypnosis for weight loss and addiction, that kind of thing. And she would help him. And one day they had a very interesting patient who suddenly started speaking differently when she was under hypnosis and was talking about things that seemed to be from a different life, but they didn't have any idea about the idea of past lives. They were totally in the Bible Belt. They didn't really know what this was, but they went with this. And this woman was seeing them because she had a weight issue, and the doctor said she really needed to lose weight. And so she would come week after week, and pretty soon it was pretty evident that she was experiencing some sort of past lives when she was under trance. And this really intrigued Dolores and got her interest, and she began really getting into that. Her husband eventually stopped doing hypnosis. He had a terrible accident. He was in a wheelchair, I think. And so she just went full on into this. And not only did she find that she was getting these past lives of people, then after a while it sort of morphed and changed. It would always evolve and change, and pretty soon she was contacting aliens through these hypnosis sessions, and she was getting information from, like, historical information. That's what she really loved, that she could go back in time with someone, with maybe they lived in Egypt and the time of the pyramids, and she would learn a whole different side than the history that we've been taught about things. And then she even had a time where she did a lot of work with a lot of different clients who had lives with Jesus. And so she wrote a bunch of books about Jesus. And then there was she had some interesting, it changed, and she started doing some work with Nostradamus. That's a very interesting book or two that she had written. She wrote 19 books when she was alive, and there's another book at least that's come out that they've published of her works that she was trying to get finished before she passed away. So there's 20 books. And so all of them kind of follow along the way it morphed and changed. Well, finally, it became this thing, QHHT, where she found that she could put a person into the deepest level of trance and come to a place where she could connect with their deepest wisdom, the part of them that kept them breathing, digested their food without them ever thinking about it. And this part of them is all-knowing and can even create healing in the body in some instances. And there was magnificent healing in a lot of sessions. That's what has drawn a lot of people to her work, as well as she went around the world doing these sessions with all different people. And you have to understand that some of her books is where she's found someone who can really go back to a really interesting time, maybe a time on another planet with an advanced civilization. And they bring back all this interesting knowledge, and so it's very intriguing. You get this whole different viewpoint of what this life is about from her books. So that's what we do in QHHT sessions. Now, they did a lot of things in those days when she was still alive. Her daughter, Julia, which is one of her daughters, really became involved in her work. She would go with her all around the world as she did classes and different things. And she really became a big part of it. And all of the business end of it was left to Julia and for Julia to run. And Julia does a wonderful job. She is the head of the official QHHT site, and she does that, and she likes it to be very true to the way her mother did the sessions when she was alive. But as I said, when Dolores was alive, her modality was always changing year after year. Different things would come up. She used to say that it was like they were giving her these little spoonfuls of information, as much as she could process and handle at a time. And slowly over the years, it became more and more and bigger, and she started being able to see this bigger picture, right? Mm-hmm. So one of her students who worked with her for many, many years, Candace Craw-Goldman, had, with her permission, created a forum where all of the QHHT practitioners would discuss things and help each other out. And she created it, so she had full rights to it because Dolores gave it to her. So that was the only thing that wasn't under Julia's control and isn't under Julia's control. And they kind of saw things differently. Candace felt that this modality was still evolving and still changing, just like it was during Dolores's life, and that you should be allowed to keep evolving it and changing it, keep going. Whereas Julia likes to keep it exactly the way it was and not allow for changes so much, right? So that's where we are now. We have two different schools. So QHHT is really Julia Cannon's baby now, and BQH, Beyond Quantum Healing, is Candace's. And I really don't have any problem with both. I think there's a place in this world for both of them. I think it's very necessary and important that we keep Dolores's work pure in one instance, and on the other hand, it's also great that we practitioners can learn and change as we feel it's necessary for our own work, right? And so the only main difference, well, there's a few differences, but the main one thing is QHHT, it has to be done in person. Dolores was never comfortable with technology, and she didn't believe it could be done or should be done remotely over Zoom, or I don't even know if we had Zoom then. Maybe we did, but so she didn't believe in that. She didn't promote that, but she didn't exactly keep people from doing it either. But now we really can't, because they could take away our certification if we were to practice it online. So that's why we do BQH, because we can do BQH online, because it's different and it's not a licensed QHHT. Did I explain it pretty good, do you think?
Yeah. Wow. Now, how long did it take you to learn and be comfortable at doing sessions?
It took me 3 weeks.
Oh, great. Wow. That's
Oh,
awesome.
well, it's a funny thing. Uh, uh, I've always been a seeker. I was a Reiki master. I studied shamanism. I studied Kabbalah. This stuff, I just love it. I'm always looking for the answer in this life. Like things aren't making sense. There's got to be a way. I always felt like it needs to make sense, So I'm always trying to make sense of things, and I'm always searching for something that's going to help me make sense of it all, right?
Yeah.
And I think about 2006 or 7, I was really having a hard time in my life, and I was really kind of depressed. And I kind of just said to the universe, I just said, you know what? I'm just done. I'm done here. I don't know what I'm doing here, and I'm just done. And the weird thing started happening. I started getting these interesting synchronicities, started making themselves apparent with me. Numbers, the people who get all the 111, the 333,
Uh-huh.
I mean, that started for me back then. And I was like, what is going on? Why do I always wake up at 11:11 and 333? Like, what is this? You know what I mean? It was like always. And I mean, and different places too, not just the clock, right? But everywhere you'd go, like, that's so funny. What is this? Well, then it started to grow from there. It became sort of symbols for me. And I would see like rainbows in the oddest places at the oddest times. And I'd be like, what is that exactly? Like, what in the world is the universe trying to tell me? I knew that it was so interesting to me because I kind of realized that something's trying to communicate with me and I'm just not getting it, And one of the symbols that I got back then was this red cardinal bird. And as you know, I live in Los Angeles, California. We don't even have red cardinal birds here. But this red cardinal bird symbol would be showing up everywhere. And one time I even ran across this stuffed red bird that sort of just appeared. It was a very strange happening. And I knew it was for me. And I knew that something was trying to tell me that this was for me. So I took it home and I was so mad. I just threw it in the back of my china cabinet. I said, I don't know what this means. I've tried to look it up. I just don't know what you want me to do with this bird. Okay. And I threw it in the back. And it was years later. I'm trying to think what year it was when did I even start my QHHT? 2013. I one day I'm listening to a radio program that I like, and they said, oh, it was in 5D radio. They said, oh, today we're going to have a new show starting with Candace Craw Goldman, and she's going to be talking about QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis. I'd never heard of it before. It's funny because my guides had definitely pushed Dolores Cannon's work on me. And I was like, oh my God, I have all this stack of books. Just stop, stop. I'm not going there. And so anyway, I'm listening to this radio program and I'm thinking, oh, wow, that's so cool. I'd love to do that. They're talking to these two practitioners, Candace and another practitioner, are talking about QHHT and the sessions they have and the things that happen. And it's incredible, right? And then Candace says to the other practitioner, she says, and this must have been 2014 because it was after I know Dolores had just passed away. She says, well, the symbol of the late great Dolores Cannon was the red cardinal bird. And I was like, my body was on fire. I was like, oh my God, really?
Oh, really?
I'm like, really? You couldn't tell me this sooner? Okay, I'm doing this. And it's so funny because up until that point, I don't even think I would have been able to take the class, what with, we owned restaurants and all the things, but everything lined up perfectly, Liz, perfectly.
Mhm.
I did QHHT. That was the first time they ever offered a partial class online. And then you had an in-person class that you did. So I did all the material online, and then they had a class here in Burbank, okay?
Mhm.
And the very first session I did, I just knew it was amazing. I said, everything I've ever done in my life has prepared me to do this perfectly.
Mhm.
Everything that I ever did made it so easy for me to do. And my very first session was smooth as glass, perfect textbook case.
Wow. Wow. So
Yeah.
how long have you been doing this now?
8 years, I think. It's like 8 years, 8+ years, something like that. Something like that. And so within that year, the first year or two, maybe, and maybe even the third year, I don't know, is when Candace developed the BQH. And then I immediately, in fact, I helped all the practitioners who were on the forum at that time. We kind of took the courses with, helping her to develop it, right? And then became certified in them. So yeah. So I always leave it to people. If somebody calls me for a QHHT, then I just do a QHHT. And if somebody calls me for a BQH, then I just do a BQH. I don't have any problem with it. And even some people don't know the difference, and I'll explain the difference to them. They'll be kind of confused. I actually have a client right now who hasn't decided. I told him, he called me wanting a BQH, and I told him the difference. I don't think he totally understood that QHHT would be in person and BQH could be remote or in person. And so he hasn't really decided. He's got his session coming up next week, actually, and he hasn't decided which one we're going to do. But I said, well, whatever feels most comfortable for you, that's what you should do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. And they're so long. The sessions are very intense, very long. How long is the average session?
I hesitate on that word average because there's never an average in these sessions. Every session is so completely different and so completely individual, Liz. I just let them run to 6 hours. I mean, they're 3 to 6 hours is it's pretty standard. But there was times when I think I talked to you about this before, where I used to do sessions at a retreat center that we have here in Venice, California. And at that retreat center, the people, before they came and got a session with me, and that was just an add-on. They had different things they could choose, Reiki, they could, and they had a list of people they could contact, and they could try these different modalities out with. And so it was whoever wanted to have a QHHT could contact me. But so not everyone would. But the thing is, they did yoga. They were on this, they were already on this path. They had a woman who would come in and do Joe Dispenza's work with them. So it really opened their heart. And, they were eating all organic food. And I think that something about that combination, those sessions were easy. They were 3-4 hours. I even did like 2 sessions a day a lot of times with them because they were ready. They were just so easy and ready. It was like they were already primed. Some people, they need more time,
Well, we did a session last night. Marybeth said, look, I'll go on the video and I'll talk about it, but you need to understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to do a session for you. And I was like, okay, so I don't have 3 hours. And we did a shortened version, and it was really, really amazing. It was my first BQH session because it was done online over the phone, or no, it was over Zoom. And at first I thought, I've never had hypnotherapy before, but we'll see. We'll see, because it's really hard for me as the one who's always, so I'm always the facilitator, right, of the healing. So it's really hard for me to sit in the chair of the person who's on the receiving end. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, this is going to be really difficult. This probably, we'll see what we get. And actually going into, it's not full hypnosis, but a slight hypnosis, enough to get the information that you need. That was fairly easy, and it was enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. It's always enjoyable. I have never had anyone say that it wasn't that. If nothing else, it's always, you feel lighter, you feel, I don't know, like you had a great nap or sleep or a massage or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was very pleasant, and it was surprising. Now, what I found really surprising was when I found this being from a past life that I had, and this being was talking to me, and this thing was like this tree, sort of, I don't know how to describe it, almost like a statue, but a tree. Mm-hmm. And then this thing started giving me information. So my question is, do you keep swapping or changing or moving through the scenes until you find something that is willing to give you information?
No. So I kind of go, so it's always different. You never know what's going to happen. You never know where you're going to go or where they're going to go or the information that they need. It's not up to me. It's up to their higher self. It's up to their subconscious, their deeper wisdom. And I just leave it up to that. And I know that they're going to show and bring up the things that are most appropriate for that person at that time. That's going to activate them. That's going to give them the healing they need, whatever it is, even if it's not what their egoic self thinks it's what they need. Believe me, it's what they need. And so I don't want to like give away too much about your session. I don't know how much you want to share, but I mean, the thing is, it could have run totally differently than that. And I don't know if you remember, but I asked you to ask that being if it was more appropriate for us to keep asking it questions, or if we should call in your higher self. Do you remember that?
I do, yes.
And it said, no, it's fine. This was fine. So that was what was meant for you in that session. That's the way I see it. It wasn't necessary. I mean, maybe you already connect with your higher self enough. Maybe that's not what was the thing that was, going to answer the questions you had or something this time, right? So this is what came up for you. And I just know what I know. When it's there, it's so funny, you connect with people, and I see, a lot of times I see what they're telling, wherever they are, I see it, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel it sometimes. And I'll afterwards, I don't say anything at the time, but I'll see something and they hadn't seen it. And afterwards I'll say, didn't you see that? Oh yeah, I saw that. And I'm like, well, I think that was important, but it's funny. So I'll just I get a feeling. And so when you were in that past life and you said, it's this statue, it's like a god and it talks to me and nobody believes me, but it gives me information. And I said, really? And I had a feeling, and I just knew that being had information for you that day. And that's where we went.
Yeah, that was so awesome. And what I liked about that session is being a psychic medium myself, people think that, oh, well, you must know everything about your life, right?
Right.
No,
No,
no, like we're not
doesn't
allowed.
work like
We
that.
can't tap into that information. We have to use our own psychic mediums. But this actually gave me a place to ask questions about my own personal life that I didn't have before and that I can get answers from about
Right.
my life. And
That's
that's what I needed.
That is what you needed, and you got exactly what you needed, and that's so beautiful. That's what's so beautiful about it. The beautiful part about QHHT, BQH is the practitioner doesn't do anything. All we do is we follow the breadcrumbs. That's how we always just. I just follow the breadcrumbs. It's like their higher self is dropping these little hints and signs and symbols, and I'm just picking them up, and just following it. That's all. We don't lead the person, we just guide them, and then we see where they go.
It is important to have a guide. It is. When you're doing that level of information gathering,
Right.
because the guide can keep you on track. You can end up going all over the place, and then you've forgotten what you were there for in the first place.
That's precisely what it's like. You're right, Liz. That is exactly what it's like. And many people have said that, and I even tell people, well, have you ever meditated before? And they said, yeah. And I go, well, it's exactly like that, except, the intentions that you set before the meditation, I have them written down and I'm looking at them the whole time. And so when you're going off and you get kind of lost, you're tripping out a bit and you lose yourself in this expansive reality or wherever you go, I'm still there with the questions in front of me and I'm able to keep going in that direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And keep guiding it. And so, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because otherwise, like, you and I, we can meditate, we can do these different things, but we kind of get lost in it, right?
Oh yeah. I can't. My problem is when I'm in a relaxed state, I want to go to sleep.
Yeah. And not everybody, everybody's wired a little bit differently. I would tell you, yes, I know that you weren't very, very deep. And I don't think you needed to be very, very deep.
No.
You were able to access the information and go along the journey without being really deep. Other people aren't wired like that. Some people don't remember anything and they need the recording because they really don't remember it. Some people think they remember everything, but don't. I'll say, oh yeah, remember the part of blah, blah, blah. And they'll go, no. And I'm like, well, maybe you want to listen to your recording because I think you don't actually remember everything, and also isn't it interesting? It's like when you go into these different altered states, even like when you dream, you wake up from the dream and you can remember everything. It's almost like you're still there. And then like 5 minutes later, it's gone. Just gone, right?
Yeah.
So at least when you've done this with a facilitator, they've recorded the whole thing. You have the recording, which takes you back to the whole vibration and frequency of the meeting, and you go all different places. Do you remember the healing that you felt during that session?
Oh yeah. See, I'd forgotten about that.
See?
My heart was vibrating.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome, right?
It is. And I definitely would like to do that again. I mean, everybody has to, yeah, let's do it. I mean, everybody has to, experience it for themselves. And you said that everybody's case or everybody's session is very different.
Very different, very individual. It's completely tailored by their higher self. And I've never had a session that's the same. They're never the same. It's always different.
Well, we want you to be a regular feature, Marybeth, with all of your mad emotion code, QHHT skills. I mean, you're really great. And it would be, do you always have to have permission to go into somebody? Do you have to have that conscious mind permission, or do you go in on with the soul permission?
I always ask for the conscious mind's permission. I respect the conscious mind. I don't, I believe that it's an interface that's necessary in our world. And we just have to use it correctly. It's just a tool, right? And it's an important tool. It's really important. And I just, I had an experience with the emotion code where I did, because sometimes, you know, it's true, like in Reiki and that, you can just say, well, if they accept it, they accept it. If they don't, they don't. I'm going to send the healing. You can do that, right? We know that. But I had a case where my daughter's boyfriend's uncle, I think, he had stage 4 bone cancer. It was sudden. He came up with this diagnosis and he was in the hospital. And, you know, they had experience with me with the emotion code and the success of it. And they came to me and they asked me if I could do some healing for him. And I said, well, sure, just ask him if I can have permission to connect with his higher self. And they were like, you know, he's not really the type to, you know, go for anything like that. We can't really we can't ask him that. And I go, no, you really need to ask. I go, just say, you know, we met this wacky lady. You don't even have to say it's me. And she does this crazy stuff. And, you know, it could help. Who knows? Why don't you give it a try? Would you give her permission? And they were like, no, we're not going to say that to him. Can you just try? And so I said, yeah, okay, fine. I'll just ask his higher self if it's okay, right? And I'll just do this. So I did the emotion code on him that night. And I don't even remember how many emotions or whatever it is, but I did feel a huge, massive release for him. And then I did those things the way I do it. I disconnected and I went to bed. And middle of the night, I remember, or maybe when I was going to sleep, my husband was really doing this obnoxious thing where he was like wrapping his ankle around my ankle, and it was just driving me crazy, right? But I didn't want to like hurt his feelings, so I said, well, he'll fall asleep eventually, right? And so I'm laying there just waiting for him to fall asleep and unwrap his ankle from me. And he gets up and he goes to the restroom. And I feel my ankle feel so weird. And I'm feeling my ankle, Liz, and there's a dip in my bone on my shin. Like it's suddenly, it's straight. And then there's this big, like maybe 1.5, 2-inch dip that goes down an inch at least in my bone. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, this is all because I did that emotion code without asking the conscious mind. And that's what I was thinking. I don't know. My husband comes back to bed. It was so funny. And the lights are off and I grab his hand. I go, come here, you got to feel this. And I take his hand and I run it down my shin, and he jumps out of bed and he turns on the light and he throws open the sheets, and we couldn't believe it. We saw this dip. And, you know, I didn't take a picture or anything. Thinking back, but I just wanted to get rid of it. So all I did was I did the emotion code for myself. And then I was exhausted by then and I went to sleep. And by the next day, it was almost all gone. There was just a slight depression. So ever since then, to answer your question, no, I always ask for permission. And I don't think that that's necessarily everybody's karma, let's say, or everybody's that everybody needs to do that. But I know for me, I need to do that. That's what that session taught me. Oh, and by the way, he was in remission after that. But who knows if it was the medicine and he's still alive.
Wow, really?
Yeah, really.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, I can't claim it was the emotion code, but he did go into the remission right after that.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. Anything else you want to tell the audience? How do they get in touch with you, Marybeth?
Email me at QHHT and me, that's AND me, ME at gmail.com. That's the best way. I try to be very available, and I love to do this stuff. It's really my passion, and I love to help people to connect with their higher self and to learn how to do the emotion code and be able to help themselves, because that's really what it's about. That's what you're here to do.
Well, that's amazing. So thank you so much for that explanation for my session. So I would understand it. We could talk about it. And again, if anybody does want a BQH session with Marybeth, you need to email her at QHHTandme@gmail.com. Marybeth, will you come join us next month and do some more emotion code clearing out and demonstration?
Absolutely, absolutely. Whatever you want to delve into, let's do that. It's so much fun, Liz. I really enjoy it. Thank you.
And me, I enjoyed as well. Marybeth, I always work very well with you anyway. I've known Marybeth for a long time. So, well, thank you so much. Again, QHHTandme@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.